This is The Drive with Dale Lolley and Matt Williamson on your 24/7 home of the black and gold. SNR, Steelers Nation Radio.
Mics are hot, guys.
Welcome to The Drive. I'm Dale Lolley. He is the Matt Williamson, and we are here at the NFL annual meetings here in Orlando at the Ritz-Carlton.
Yeah.
A lot more business going on here today.
A little different vibe than 24 hours ago.
Yeah,
yesterday we were ahead of the parade, and now the parade's flying through.
Yeah, everybody is here now. It's all happening, and we've gotten to hear from Mike Tomlin twice now in the last 24 hours. We sat down with him. I was one of the people that sat down with him yesterday when he spoke to the assembled media, the local Pittsburgh media that are here. And obviously a lot of the questions centered on what's gone on at the quarterback position with the Steelers this offseason.
Of course. I mean, that's the topic of the offseason. I mean, you revamp an entire position room, let alone a quarterback room. It's going to be noteworthy.
And you had a Super Bowl winning quarterback and another guy who was a first-round draft pick.
Right. There's high pedigree guys coming in and much different style of play, and I can't wait to see how it's implemented and excited to hear what he had to say about it, too.
Well, let's hear that now, Matt. Here's some of what Mike Tomlin had to say yesterday with the Pittsburgh media.
The last time you talked,
clear, guys.
had a much different. You had just Kenny at quarterback, and now it's a completely different room. It's been a couple months. What happened from when you were talking with us in January until now?
You know, I don't know that dramatic things happen from a perception standpoint. We had one quarterback on our roster. Last time we talked, we knew obviously we had to acquire some talent at the position. And so we just studied the field and levels of availability among some of the candidates in the field. We got zeroed in on Russell and Justin among them. Obviously, probably the goal was to, get one guy initially, but through conversation and work, and can't give Omar enough credit, we were able to acquire both guys.
Mike, what happened with Kenny? Why deal?
I just think it was, from his perspective, he felt like a change of scenery would be a good thing. Obviously, when we felt the trajectory of the business with Chicago moving in the right direction, those dominoes started falling. I won't get into specifics about our conversations, but I am appreciative of his efforts during his time in Pittsburgh, and I wish him nothing but the absolute best in Philadelphia.
Mike, were you disappointed the way you kind of handled Kenny?
Again, I'm not getting into specifics about what transpired, who said what, who did what. Really, it's water under the bridge at this point. I'm excited about the guys that we have in the room, and I know he's excited about his new opportunity and fresh start in Philadelphia.
How do you see Justin Fields fitting into this situation this season?
I think that's to be determined. And I think that's one of the exciting components of team development. The division of labor roles and so forth, particularly when you got new and exciting talent, makes the process an exciting one. And so I'm excited about getting to know him and his skill set and what he can do. We've been very transparent about the pecking order, at least to start. I just think that provides clarity for all parties involved. Russell is a veteran, man. He's got a proven process of readiness. He's been in this league a long time. He's capable of rallying troops, receivers, tight ends, running backs, etc. He's just got a lot of experience in terms of what it takes to be the guy over the course of a 12-month calendar, and I just think that that's something that a younger guy like Justin could learn from. It provides clarity for all parties involved as they do some of the informal things that collectors do this time of year, whether it's coming together to work out and destinations and things of that nature. Rest assured, when it's time,
30 seconds,
given an opportunity to compete, and we'll allow those guys to sort themselves out. But I thought it was appropriate to describe it in the way that I described it in terms of how we get started. Russell's in pole position. I think his body of work, justifies that. And just from my conversations with Justin, I know
10
is excited about working alongside Russell, man, and maybe learning some of those.
5. Mics are hot, guys.
from being in this league for over a decade.
That was Mike Tomlin yesterday with the assembled media. He kind of reiterated that whole thing this morning when he spoke at the coaches' breakfast. Russell Wilson comes in as the number
pole
one
position.
Pole position, as Mike Tomlin said. Justin Fields will be the number 2, but they're excited about, and he said that Fields was excited about when they spoke to him, working behind Russell Wilson and learning behind that veteran quarterback who is a similar style of quarterback to Justin Fields. Maybe he isn't quite the runner that Fields is, but that's certainly a component of his game.
See, I really like the dynamic of kind of the older brother, younger brother type of situation, because I think Justin even said when he was drafted, one of the guys he studied coming into the league was Russell Wilson. You know, and Wilson was a different player then than he is now. But Wilson was also a lot different player when he was Justin's age, too. I mean, there weren't as many run-around athletic quarterbacks at that point. It was, 10 years ago or whatever, and times changed quick. And he was often one of the best athletes on the field when he was Justin's age and developed into much more. So I think that he can be the perfect mentor for both. I mean, it's a really good dynamic between the two of them.
It is. Yeah. And I think I was talking with one of the writers from Chicago this morning as we were waiting for Mike Tomlin to come out, and he said that Fields, when you think about it, he's the 11th pick in the draft when he comes out. He's immediately inserted into the starting lineup.
Oh,
and you're the guy for the who have all the pressure on you. You're the first round pick. You're the savior of the franchise. For a franchise in Chicago that really hasn't had a franchise quarterback
in my lifetime.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, Jim McMahon might be since
Jay Cutler.
the Sid Luckman days. I mean, they've been searching. So there's a lot of pressure on the quarterback in that town because of that. So now
I'm not making excuses for Fields, but is it the organization or is it the player? When you go 50 years without having a franchise quarterback, maybe it's not you, it's me,
But now he gets a chance to take a step back and maybe breathe a little bit and watch a veteran player who has a similar skill set to him.
Absolutely. And I go back to early career Russ Wilson. He was a third-round pick. He stole the job from Flynn, who was a semi-high-price free agent.
Yeah, they gave him
was
money.
Expected to start, you know. But Wilson was too good as a rookie, third-round guy. He's too short, all that nonsense, or he would have been a first-round pick. But where I'm going with this is those Seattle teams early in his career were Marshawn Lynch, the Legion of Boom, big-time defense, and didn't ask him to be Superman, And I think that's going to be the formula here. So it's a balancing act. You have to get more big plays from the quarterback position than they have the last couple years. But you can't kill us with turnovers because we're going to try to help you with defense and running game. And so that's going to be really Coach Tomlin's balancing act.
Yeah.
Right.
By the way, folks, the folks who aren't watching our show on YouTube, which you should do if you get a chance, go to the Steelers YouTube channel and check that out. But if you're listening to the podcast, you can't see that Matt and I have matching shirts on today.
I know, pure accident.
We did not plan that. We didn't plan ahead when we packed to come to Orlando to say, hey, I'm going to wear this shirt on Monday, and you're going to wear that one.
Yeah.
We probably should do that.
Maybe we should
to make sure
tomorrow,
that we don't wear the same shirts. I could text you in the morning. Maybe I'll take a picture of what shirt I have on.
It looks like our uniform.
Yeah.
But good stuff there from Coach.
Yeah,
sure.
good stuff. And there was a lot more. He talked about how these guys fit into Arthur Smith's system. And he was asked about that again today, and he said, are these guys a good fit in Arthur Smith's system? He said, absolutely. For what they want to do, and I asked him specifically about what attracted him to Arthur Smith, as the coordinator yesterday, and he said, look, this, I've coached against this guy in Tennessee. I coached against him as a head coach in Atlanta, and I just know that his mentality meshes with our mentality in terms of what he wants to do, what he tries to accomplish with his offenses. He said it's not going to be any kind of transition for him to be the kind of coach that we need him to be because he's done it. And he also, I asked him, I said, this is multiple times now that you've had a former NFL head coach on your staff.
Sure.
And what does that bring to the equation for you? Well, how does that help you? And he said, it's a lot of stuff that you can, you can go over practice schedules and with the guy who's been a head coach and say, hey, what can we do better with this? What did you do in your previous stops? He said, and things of that nature that you don't think about, but it just helps him from that perspective that has somebody who's been in his shoes.
Yeah, a lot to unpeel there. I mean, so a job that big, there is no handbook for it.
No.
And obviously Coach Tomlin's been there longer than Flores or Smith, but still, there's very few people on the planet that have been asked to do that job. And there's even the ones that have done it the worst of all time, you could learn something from.
Right.
Because, I mean, it's such a unique
Even if
position.
it's don't do that.
Yeah, right. Like, boy, I made a mistake doing this. I'm like, I didn't think of that. I hope I don't go down that road, too, or whatever. Or I should have handled the media better. Or I should have been more on top of this, the weight program, whatever. So I do think having someone that's been in that shoes in the building with you, assuming they know their role, which of course they do at this point, and no one's challenging Tomlin. And I actually think it's very good for Smith because I thought he was a great coordinator that got thrust into a position that was a little over his head, especially at the end there in Atlanta, dealing with more than just the X's and O's and that type of thing. As for the fit in his system, what I'm interested in, what worries me, is the middle of the field throwing stuff because neither one of these guys, especially Wilson, pulls the trigger between the numbers very much. And a lot of Smith's areas of the field that he attacks are between the numbers. That being said, this offensive scheme, more so than the last one, has very defined reads. And I really mean that for Fields as a younger player because Fields, his biggest problem to me is getting the ball out on time, and getting it out of his hands. But these reads are much more defined for Fields than they were in Chicago. And again, I'm not bashing the Bears.
It's a more quarterback friendly.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, you're going here or you're going here. And therefore you're not patting the ball and making plays or dropping your eyes.
Here, or run.
Or run, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. I'm sure his third read's often going to be run
or
even his second read. So that part is appealing to me. I mean, it's a lot more defined, and that'll go a long way for a young quarterback.
Yeah, I wonder how much of that with Russell Wilson in the middle of the field stuff is simply because of who he played with. Mm-hmm. I mean, I can't think of very many tight ends that he has played with that you go, oh, that's a really good tight end.
True. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, Denver didn't utilize the tight end this past couple years. Seattle's never had big-time guy.
Yeah.
I mean, Jimmy Graham was there for a while, but late in his career, I don't think he wasn't there with Jeremy Stevens. I mean, so I'm just trying to think of recent tight end usage. I mean, it's a lot of DK Metcalf down the sideline, Lockett.
Which is where he does his work. Lockett's the, a kind of a deep threat as well. Mm-hmm. So you just, I just wonder how much of that is a result of not having that weapon.
But it's still the whole key is, too, Smith needs to bend towards Wilson and Fields.
Right, yeah.
Wilson and Fields needs to bend towards Smith.
You get the red paint, you paint the barn red.
Right. I mean, so Atlanta was last in the league in 11 personnel last year. Steelers were near the top. I don't think it's going to be one or the other this year.
Probably be somewhere in the middle.
It's probably going to be 20th or 16th or something like that. But you also better add some receivers, too. So that's a personnel thing. But that's still coming.
Absolutely. Let's get to our first break here, and when we come back, we'll be joined by Jerry Dulek of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette and the Steelers Radio Network. Jerry was sitting in with me on all those interviews with Mike Tomlin, so we'll get his perspective on
that's great.
How all that went when we return. You're listening to The Drive here on Steelers Nation Radio. We are at the NFL meetings here, annual meetings here in Orlando. We'll be back with more right after this.
All clear, guys.
With Dale Lolley and Matt Williamson on your 24/7 home of the black and gold. SNR Steelers Nation Radio.
Mics are hot, guys.
Welcome back. I'm Dale Lolley here with Matt Williamson, and we're joined here at the owners' meetings in Orlando by Pittsburgh Post-Gazette Steelers beat reporter and Steelers Radio Network co-host, analyst, well, all the above.
Those things,
all
right?
the above.
Right.
But, we usually do a lot of different shows together, Jerry, but usually you're hosting and
I'm glad to be in this chair. I like getting the questions. I don't have to come up with them. I'll just sit back and listen and fire back once you guys throw it at me.
And for those of you who can't see us on YouTube, which again I suggest you go and check out our YouTube show on so you can see the video here. Jerry's bringing the color to the show today. You are really the analyst here. Matt and I are our monochrome Steeler shirts, and you have your. What's the logo there? Is that Oakmont?
It's a little, let me show it off. Yeah, it's Oakmont.
I say we look like a mint Oreo.
Yeah, that's a good one right there, yeah.
Is there decent golfing down in this neck of the woods?
Yeah, I hear they have some good golf courses there. I haven't checked any out today.
Not yet.
But I
do. The last 12 hours.
That's right. I do know they are here, including there's one right out there in the backyard that's not too shabby. The PGA Tour actually plays their father-son event here. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. So, Jerry, we got a chance to hear from Mike Tomlin twice now in the last 24 hours for the first time this offseason, and obviously a lot of the conversation centered around the quarterback position. What were your takeaways from all of that?
Well, Dale, two things. One of the reasons why that we come to the owners' meetings, and one of the good things about it, is not only do we get to hear from Mike Tomlin always for the first time since the end of the season news conference, but the Pittsburgh group, gets him in more of a relaxed setting, and typically he's a little bit more forthcoming and comfortable in that environment, although I got a big kick out of when he said yesterday that he's, how did he say it? He basically said, I'm not a believer in comfort, or whatever, I'm not addicted to it, whatever he said. And so, we talked to him yesterday at length, which was nice. And, of course, the coach's breakfast today, where a lot of the national media want to pipe in with their questions. And that's fine. That's fine, because everybody's looking for something different. But, he was very expansive about the quarterbacks, the quote, search for them, the way this thing, kind of unfolded, as he referred to it, as the dominoes falling in place. And it started with the acquisition of Russell Wilson, which led to the unhappiness of Kenny Pickett, which led to the trade of Kenny Pickett, which then led to going back to the Chicago Bears and acquiring.
Those are the dominoes falling.
Right, Justin Fields. And so And here we are, fellas, a month ago, none of us, no one in Pittsburgh, no one in the country, if you'd have said the quarterback room from last year would be completely empty and there would be 2 new quarterbacks, nobody would have anticipated that. And let's face it, the trade of Kenny Pickett probably sent some shockwaves through the city, surprise and stunned like we haven't seen in a long
that was
time.
not what they were looking to do.
No, that is correct.
Initially, they had planned on having a quarterback room that was a veteran guy and Kenny Pickett, and allowing those two to compete, which is what they were saying all along. It then changed when Pickett said, I don't want to be here anymore.
When you look at what they've done in free agency and the broader picture of it, they were very active in free agency the previous 2 years. What we've seen this year is the magnitude of the players they're bringing in, and for all the attention focused on Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, understandably so, because it's quarterback and it's the most important position in professional sports. The acquisition of Patrick Queen, to me, is the biggest and probably, fingers crossed for their sake, the most impactful move, because it in their desire, hopefully, brings some stability to a position that's been a revolving door since Ryan Shazier's career-ending injury in 2016. You're talking about a guy in Patrick Queen who's going to be 25 in August, has been 4 years in the league, and Mike Tomlin said that might be the most attractive thing about him. He brings a unique blend of experience yet youth, and started every game for 4 years. 5 forced fumbles, 6 recoveries, 13.5 sacks, and a cover guy.
Yeah.
And, if he stays healthy, which he has been throughout his career, man, that guy can make a difference in that defense.
So, Jerry, I want to talk about a lot of the moves they made, including the Deontay Johnson trade. But let's go backwards real quick on the quarterbacks. You're dialed in. You read the tea leaves as well as anyone. Do you get the impression they're excited, like this exceeded their expectation for their quarterback hunt, or they settled for this, or boy, they upgraded, or the names are exciting, the pedigree's exciting. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, and Mike Tomlin has used that word as well. I think by bringing in Russell Wilson, there's no question they felt they upgraded their quarterback room. Let's go back even further. After the season, Art Rooney II, the team president, effectively said his patience was running thin. He said, quote, "It's time to win playoff games." And I think he set kind of the tone with that, and they followed suit. And they felt that Russell Wilson gave them the better option to get into the postseason, which I know they did last year, but win a playoff game, which they haven't done in 7 years. They're 0-5, the last 5 playoff games, and maybe get their playoff train headed back in the direction it needs to go, which is win a game and see what happens. And they've just been unable to do that. And, they feel that Russell Wilson gives them a chance to do that. And then, of course, when it all unfolded with Kenny Pickett, let's face it, to me, they got a better option with Justin Fields, a skill set that's completely better and completely different. And with no disrespect to Kenny Pickett, who can move and has some mobility, it's not Justin Fields.
Not close.
He was the 11th overall pick in a draft of quarterbacks, whereas Kenny Pickett was the 20th overall pick in an average class of quarterbacks. So I don't think there's any question that the room has been upgraded. And I know Justin Fields won 10 games in 3 years. He was 10-28, and Russell Wilson's won 11 games the last 2 years in Denver. But I think and I'm with you. I think it is an upgrade. And I think they're excited. And let's face it, it's generated a lot of excitement, certainly interest, and a lot of excitement in town.
Yeah, and when you look at that and those additions that you mentioned on defense, not only Patrick Queen, Deshaun Elliott, you go and you get a cornerback in Dante Jackson, who's an established outside cornerback. You've improved your team speed up the middle of the field. You've improved your team speed defensively in the back 7 here, and couple that with the pass rush that they're able to generate. The defense should be pretty good, and Matt keeps mentioning, when you look at Russell Wilson's career, early career, Russell Wilson had the Legion of Boom there, and their running game it kind of matches up with what he had, in his early days in Seattle.
And Dale just mentioned team speed. I've been harping on that on defense too. Everybody they added on defense is an upgrade speed-wise.
And I think the other thing it does too, you address inside linebacker, you address strong safety, and I like the acquisition of Deshaun Elliott. That guy is a thumper, and he can run, and he has some length back there. The funny thing about him, he's built more like a cornerback than a strong safety. But so what that allows them to do is focus a little bit more attention. On the defensive line in the draft. I know it's not a heavy draft for the types of players they want on the defensive line, but there's no question. I think those moves, and headed by Patrick Queen, right there, it just improves their defense a great deal. And so now you get a running game that is proven with two. You have a 1 and a 1A now with those two guys. It's not A and B. It's 1 and 1A. With Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren. And I think the other thing, too, you look at the defense. You had Patrick Queen, $41 million over 3 years. It was already, if it wasn't still number one, it was number two and the most expensive defense in the league. It is, without question, the cheapest offense in the league. You have a quarterback room that is inexpensive. Russell Wilson, $1.2 million. You have 2 running backs on their rookie contract. You have every wide receiver on their rookie contract. Both your tackles are on their rookie contract. You don't have a center right now, effectively. And the only 2 guys who cost you some amount of money are the guards. So it is a cheap, inexpensive offense that has room to grow financially, and that's maybe if they could bring in one of those high-priced wide receivers. They intended to do that with Mike Williams, but the Jets beat them to it with, I think, probably with a bigger deal than the Steelers would have been willing to pay.
That's kind of brings me to my next question. To me, that's maybe the next shoe to drop or the last shoe to drop before you go into the draft. They really could use 2 more receivers
without
they could count on, and you don't want to go in the draft needing 2. You think they land a veteran of some sort between now and draft?
Well, I know they want to, and what's out there for the pickings. We'll see. I don't know that Tyler Boyd is not the answer to me for what they need at that position. You need a strong number 2. They have such high hopes for George Pickens, and as he goes into this season.
Could a trade be in place?
Without question. Without question. I think that's a possibility. And so, they don't want to get 2 wide receivers in a draft. I thought there would be a wide receiver before Deontay Johnson's trade, within day 2 of the draft. And now, obviously, I'm convinced it'll be by day 2 of the draft. And there are a lot of wide receivers out there. And so, I think it bodes well, but the problem is then you have such a young receiving room.
You don't want to put 2 rookies in.
No,
room,
right. And you brought in Van Jefferson, and so he's brought in for depth. A former high pick, but never was really productive in the NFL. But I definitely think they would like to do that, but they have to see who's willing to do that.
Yeah, and then you look at the center position, and Tomlin said yesterday that. Could still be a veteran guy. Maybe they're waiting to see what happens with Connor Williams and how his knee is progressing, or they go that direction in the draft.
Yeah, I don't think there's a whole lot in free agency that gives them a big upgrade over Mason Cole, but that is definitely the case in the draft. And, man, if they don't go 1, I think by number 2, centers typically don't go high in the draft. Tyler Linderbaum who was rated higher than any of these guys, lasted till number 25. And I think only 2 centers have gone in the first round in the last 4 years. So I don't expect a run on centers. Don't expect 2 in the first round. And I think at 20 they have a good chance to get one of the ones that they like. And I'm not sure whether it's Zach Frazier or the other JPJ that could be added to the team. I think they have to find, to me, I'm not going to sit here and say they got to go find Marquise Pouncey, but if you can find a quote anchor like that for the next 8 to 10 years, and you think he's out there, to me, I'd go get him right away.
This is the franchise that knows a little something
about centers.
About center plays and quality center play.
Right, and we'll forget about Kendrick Green, but after that, we're doing okay.
So real quick, back to the Deontay Jackson versus Johnson for Jackson trade.
Dante for Dante.
Yeah,
basically.
It gets a little convoluted. But I remember looking at my phone when that came through. I'm like, wow, it's a little light for Deontay, to be honest with you. But the more I dug into Jackson, I think they love this guy. I think they like him a lot more than I initially thought and been after him for a while.
Matt, I haven't, I'll be honest with you, I haven't had a chance to look into, how good he can be or has been. But I'm with you. I thought what they got in return wasn't commensurate with a player of Johnson's, productivity. Mm-hmm. Let's face it, he's a tremendous route runner. Works very hard. His hands are a little suspect. We saw him go from bad to decent, back to bad. Some questionable decisions. Obviously, questions about his desire on the football field, his attitude, his pouting, whichever you want to call it, his disruptive behavior. Incidents with Mitch Trubisky that got him benched, the one with Minkah Fitzpatrick. So obviously there were questions, character questions, and things like that. All that being said, I personally like Deontay.
Yeah, he's a good player.
Yeah, and I agree. I don't know that what they got in return was commensurate with his abilities, but we're going to find out if what kind of move that was.
Yeah, that's one that you're kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul in that situation to get the cornerback. But the way I looked at it, Jared, was if you started looking at the free agent cornerback market,
right, and the draft,
you only have one first round draft pick and one second round draft pick. You try to get another starting cornerback there. That might have been the price that you just had to pay, the cost of doing business.
I just think you'd rather be shopping in the wide receiver aisle than the cornerback aisle.
Yeah.
Kind of like that analogy. Kind of like being at Publix.
Used it a couple times.
Or let's keep it a little closer to home, Giant Eagle.
Yeah, the Eagle.
I'm not sure Deontay's also the blocker that Arthur Smith's looking for either.
Yeah, probably not. And that was the other thing. Mike Tomlin was very effusive about why he brought in Arthur Smith, what he liked about him. And you had this segment of the fan base that they want to see the young guys, the Sean McVay disciples, Cliff Kingsbury, who was never on their list.
That was the funny thing. So Cliff Kingsbury's 43.
Yeah, right.
Maybe he's considered a young guy.
Right.
Arthur Smith's 41.
Right.
He's not considered a young guy.
Yeah, they wanted those kind of fashionable guys. Zach Robinson signed before they ever could get a meeting with him. But Arthur Smith is exactly what Mike Tomlin said he wanted after the season. A guy who's run NFL offenses before. And that's what they got with this guy. And, having talked to Mike Mularkey about him and Ken Wisenhunt about him, I think it's an outstanding hire.
And as Mike said yesterday, he came with the stamp of approval from Mike Munchak as well. That's who he cut his teeth working with all those years.
To show you how credible he is and what coaches think of him, Munchak hired him, and he lasted through 3 other coaches with Tennessee. Wisenhunt, Mularkey, and Mike Vrabel, and he promoted each time. That's 4 different coaches who kept this guy and kept moving him up, and that's all you need to know about what they think.
And every one of those guys has Steeler ties.
Right, exactly. That's right. And they can't all. You're right. They must all have something. They don't certainly have any negative opinions about him. He wouldn't have lasted.
And he also, he began his career working, for Joe Gibbs. That's a pretty
shabby. Yeah,
that's a pretty good track record.
Yeah.
So real quick on the offense side of the ball, we've been saying for a while we expect Freiermuth's role to grow. Last year was kind of a waste of a great asset, in my opinion. Do you think that's part of this hire too, is get that tight end involved?
Yeah, and obviously that's his background as a tight end, assistant tight ends coach. I think not only his role will expand, I think his wallet's going to expand here pretty soon as well. Yeah, I don't think there's any question about it, and having him involved, and it might, maybe it means a little bit more for Darnell Washington in terms of a receiver, but of course we know he's a terrific blocker, and that's what Arthur Smith is looking for as well. So I don't think there's any question it involves the tight ends more, but most especially.
I'd like to see Washington's routes get a little deeper down the field.
Yeah.
Not 1 and 2 yard turnaround stuff.
Yeah. I don't know that his knees could get him that far down the field, but we'll see.
We'll figure all that stuff out later. But Jared, we'll let you get back to business here. We appreciate you stopping by. Our guest has been Jerry Dulac of the Post-Gazette and the Steelers Radio Network. He's Matt Williamson. I am Dale Lolley. We are here at the NFL spring meetings here in Orlando. We'll be back with more on The Drive right after this.
is The Drive with Dale Lolley and Matt Williamson on your 24/7 home of the black and gold. SNR, Steelers Nation Radio.
You're hot, guys.
And we are back here at the lovely Ritz-Carlton here in Orlando. And, boy, this place is just buzzing with people today.
People going back and forth. I mean, a lot of faces and names people would know, and we got a lot of booths set up here for teams. And this seems to grow year to year, too. It's almost like reminds me of the Combine. Like, the
radio row here is getting
a little more
expanding every year. Since I've been coming to this is probably my 6th or 7th owners meeting, I think.
This is my 2nd, and there's definitely more than last year.
Yeah, so it's continues to expand as the NFL continues its hold on the populace for about 11 out of 12 months out of the year.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
The league only shuts down really for about 3 weeks in July.
3 weeks, yeah, and then camp starts.
Camps open.
And then you flood.
So a lot of stuff happening here this week. He's Matt Williamson. I'm Dale Lolley, by the way.
Good stuff there with Jerry, too.
Yeah, good stuff there. And that, the defensive line stuff, he's right about that. And when we've done our mock drafts, we've always kind of tried to draft a defensive lineman at some point in there, and there just aren't many of the body types that the Steelers look for.
It's a thin group, and I hate to do this because in my core, I want more D-line. I want more D-line. I want to be built like Georgia and Alabama and waves of Will Anderson.
That's one thing he said
Carter,
yesterday. He said, he said that one of the things that he said about Arthur Smith is he said Arthur believes in building through the bigs.
Oh, okay.
Like we do, and that's why we've got the both sides of the ball. They want to get those quality players in the trenches.
Yeah, and under Smith, everyone talks about he drafted all these guys in the top 8 that are skill guys. Lindstrom, Bergeron, these guys are high picks too.
Yeah.
I mean, Matthews was already in place. I mean, they invested a lot in that offensive line in Atlanta, which makes me think a couple things. I mean, I absolutely think early in the draft there's a chance they go center and tackle, maybe even back-to-back. I mean, like, they are not close to being done on the offensive line, in my opinion. D-line's a little trickier, though.
And because of the lack of depth there.
Yeah, there's not as many names that just, that looks like a Steeler. That's who I want to develop.
If you look at the body types, there's really only maybe 4 or 5.
Especially if you're done with the nose world, which I think they are.
That fit with what they do. Or what they got to be big enough to ride. They have to have certain length and size.
Rook at Clemson, Jenkins at Michigan. I mean, and you run out pretty quick. Even the first round guys are more Geno Atkins types. I mean, that's not going to be the direction they go. So again, it hurts my core to say this, but I wonder if that's next year's project. Is your first round pick next year maybe a 6'5", 300-pound defensive lineman that can maybe be
I haven't looked that far into the future to see, but I'm sure Georgia has a couple, or Alabama has a couple.
It's got to be a better crop than this.
Yeah.
But that also.
But if that's the case, everybody's shopping in that.
Those guys aren't easy to get either. Look what those guys are making nowadays too. D tackles are making big money, and that's becoming a premium position where it wasn't 5 years ago. But still, I do look at this draft, and no offense to their last 2 picks, but they have 5 picks to me that are legit picks that you can kind of say, I want this, this, and this with those 5 picks in whatever order. And I think of those 5, one's going to be a slot corner of some sort, or some sort of corner, probably a slot. At least one's a receiver. I think one's a center, and one's a tackle. Well, that leaves this guy. I mean, is that a quarterback? Is that best athlete available? Is it a D lineman that you develop? I mean, a Mason Smith or somebody like that. There's not many to pick from, but maybe even if you trade down a smidge in round 1 and have to trade up in round 2,
or maybe you got to take a guy like a Mason Smith maybe a round earlier than you normally would.
Yeah, right. I mean, if you thought maybe he's an early 4th, you take him in mid-3rd. I would understand that.
Just because it's kind of a defensive tackle desert.
It's thin. Thin. And you don't want to be short there either.
I thought something interesting, Matt, that Mike Tomlin said today, and I wrote about that today on Steelers.com. You can check that out on there. He said that a lot of you mentioned slot cornerback. He said a lot of the slot corners in college football end up being safeties, whereas in the NFL, he says a lot of the slot you need an actual cornerback to play the slot in the NFL because they need the coverage abilities to go with that.
I mean, like, I always go back to A.J. Green because he seems like the prototype. It's a long time ago. Prototypical outside the numbers receiver.
They put him in the slot.
Yeah, he plays in the slot. I mean, let alone Tyreek and Jefferson and Chase and all these guys.
Well, look, even some of the guys who are coming out in this year's draft that you'd look at and you go, oh, he's not like Ricky Pearsall, for example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's a 6'1", 190-pound slot receiver. That's what he is.
Yeah.
He's not Wes Welker.
No,
he's not
short,
5'9".
Right. Those guys are fading away quick. Slot corner is an interesting dynamic in the league right now because I'd like to go. I'm going to go back and listen to what Coach said about him because very few play slot in the corner like that is being asked in the league, and a lot of times too, you might get a tight end in the slot that can really run, an Ingram, a Kelsey, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And is that matchup against Mike Hilton's of the world? Not really.
We got a little breaking news here, Matt.
Oh yeah.
The Steelers have signed wide receiver Quez Watkins.
Okay, makes some sense.
Speed receiver.
Andy
Weidel would know him from Philadelphia.
Yeah, there's an Eagle tie.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It doesn't take them out of the receiver market.
No, I think that's a Van Jefferson level signing.
Yeah.
That's a 4 battle with Calvin Austin. Those 3 are very different. Jefferson versus Austin versus Watkins. Watkins and Austin could fly, but Watkins is a taller, more established outside the numbers type guy. We know what Austin is. Jefferson's a route runner who, I don't know if people know this, his dad's an NFL wide receiver coach.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been groomed to be a wide receiver. He's just not as gifted as those guys in terms of taking.
He did
the
have
top
900
off.
receiving yards a couple years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like he's a throwaway.
He's not a throwaway.
Yeah.
Not by any means. This works. I mean, we talked a lot about the Boyds and the Reynolds and those types. This isn't the speed bump to me of adding Ayuk or a first-round receiver or anything, but it's just another guy in the mix. So, makes sense. They have the money to spend.
Yeah, absolutely. So, that's one of those veteran wide receivers now taken, or one of those 2 receiver spots that we talked about is now filled with a veteran guy here. And so, that's one more thing checked off the box there.
So, immediate reaction, and I'm not downplaying it by any stretch. I'd have to look at the contracts on both of them, but I'm sure they're very minimal.
Yeah.
I would bet Watkins and or Jefferson isn't even guaranteed to make the team. You could still add 2 high-quality dudes, only make 5. They're nice additions. They could be very useful, but they're not the answer. It's not like, you got Pickens counter. It's not Stallworth and Swan.
Yeah, he started 12 games, actually, for Philadelphia in 2021.
Oh, okay.
That was his had 43 catches for 647 yards and a touchdown. That touchdown being a 91-yard touchdown.
The big play thing.
Big play.
There.
Definitely has a big play ability. 8 starts in 2022, 33 catches for 354 yards and 3 touchdowns. And then last season started 9 games for the Eagles, 15 catches for 142 yards. They didn't throw the ball real well last year.
No, they didn't. They had their issues. And this again reiterates what a good deep passer Russell Wilson is too. I mean, this is his type of receiver. If you don't mind, can you pull up his combine numbers? Because I'm more interested in his height and weight.
He can fly.
I mean, I know his 40 time was really good, but I was just curious what he weighed in at the combine. Is he?
Yeah,
I think he's 6'1" or so. I'm guessing maybe about 183.
He ran a 4.36 at the combine.
I know he could fly. Yeah, I mean that's
he's
not a problem. He plays that way still.
Looking here,
what his official
6 foot 185 at the combine.
Okay, I was close.
So he's a little thicker than what I thought.
Yeah.
Because he probably lightened up a little bit to
if he ran there
to be able to run there. Yeah.
So
he did.
It's a depth signing.
He ran actually a 4.35 at the combine and 1.51 split, 36.5-inch vertical, 10.5 on the broad. I mean, he is explosive.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's his deal. I mean, he's a vertical receiver.
Yeah, so
that's a nice addition. Yeah.
Yeah. So
this shows that they know they're a little light there.
Yeah, just keep adding NFL caliber guys to some of these positions and see what works out.
Yeah, that's not a bad move. I'm sure it was not an expensive signing either.
No, it doesn't take them out of the market, as you said.
No.
The receiver market in the draft,
or even a big trade.
This is a great wide receiver class.
I do think it takes you out of the Boyd Reynolds level guys, though. You know, the threes. I mean, I think you're comfortable there.
I mean, he was a 3 on a team that went to the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, behind Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. Yeah. He was one of the best pairings in the league. Yeah.
So
that's a good pickup.
Yeah, that's a guy that I'll have to look and see what kind of special teams ability. He was a 6th-round pick.
I don't think he tackles anyone on teams.
No, probably not.
No.
But with these new kickoff rules that could be coming into play, you start looking at a guy like that can fly.
Yeah.
Maybe that was one thing that Tomlin talked about. Some of the ramifications if they do make this change in the kickoff rules. What is the fallout from that? There will be more returns this year.
Oh, no question.
And, so do you then need some of these return guys that maybe teams kind of moved away from a little bit in recent years?
See, I was thinking it might help the 200 or 190-pound scat back with return skills. They might get drafted around earlier this year.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Something like that. Or a special teamer that can run down on kicks or punts, but is a better returner than the guys the Steelers have used lately on kickoff returns. Maybe that guy gets a little bump in his contract or lasts a year longer than he would have in the league, something along those lines.
Yeah.
You can't just ignore it.
No, you can't. I mean, I think the last couple of years, because of the way the league has shifted away from the returns,
every team's ignored
I think some teams did.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't think the Steelers prioritize their kickoff returner. I mean, McFarland was their best guy over the last 3 years, I'm talking, and he was inactive a lot. There's no reason to stress it. You just put your hand up and then catch a fair catch or watch it go over your head out of the end of the stands.
They did have 24 returns last year as a team, which was actually more than most teams.
Is that high?
Yeah, that was on the high end of that. Some teams, you had a dozen returns. Mm-hmm. So they took a chance on it more often than some other teams.
Yeah, and maybe that's – I have no idea why, but maybe the teams didn't kick it out of the end zone against the Steelers as often as they did other teams.
I think some of that's because of where you play. Mm-hmm. You get into November in Pittsburgh or in the Northeast, and the kickoffs are going to be shorter. May give you more of a chance to return. So
I don't know. Number of returns to me seems like more of a kickoff stat than a kick returner stat. Because most teams can just kick it out of the end zone if they want. With the old rules, and if they chose to, great. If not, then you return it.
Yeah, so that's a
nice pickup, though, with Watkins.
Yeah, the latest move there for the Steelers. Let's get to another break. That's going to do it for our coverage here of hour number 1 at the NFL meetings here in Orlando. He's Matt Williamson. I'm Dale Lolley. You're listening to The Drive, and we'll be back with hour number 2 right after this.
With Dale Lolley and Matt Williamson on your 24/7 home of the black and gold. SNR Steelers Nation Radio.
Mics are hot.
Welcome back to hour number 2 of the drive here on Steelers Nation Radio. And, of course, you can also check out the show on YouTube here if you want to see that lovely, what was that, lime green?
Oh, yeah.
Like
complimented
like
as well.
key lime green
Yep. He's always
shirt that Jerry Dulac was
he's
wearing.
always a colorful fluorescent fella. I mean, it's a golf thing. You know?
Yeah, you want to make sure you can see out on the golf course so you don't
Right.
get hit in the back with a ball like by Larry David did to
I pretended like I know. I just assume there's awesome courses here, but they're awesome courses
They're
here.
great courses.
Yeah, okay, that makes
Yeah,
sense,
Florida's just littered with them.
Yeah, and I would think in this area.
You've seen the one as you drive into this
I mean, it's
complex
beautiful.
here.
I assumed it was a high-end course.
Yeah, no, it's very nice.
Not
Very
too
nice.
shabby in Arizona last year either.
No, there's some good courses out there as well, and go figure that the NFL holds its meetings where there's somewhere good to golf.
Yeah, I have a feeling a lot of the folks in attendance brought clubs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did not, because we're on the air and we're working here.
Man.
Yeah, this is a working trip, very much so for us. And the NFL also doing some work today. A lot of the stuff starting to be discussed and get voted on. And according to Ian Rappaport, he is hearing that the hip drop tackle has been voted on and it will be outlawed.
I kind of saw that coming.
Yeah.
I mean, the defense isn't going to like it. Their job is admittedly very, very difficult, but the league wants more points. They want player safety.
Yeah, they don't want their star players being taken off the field on carts.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll see plenty of flags this year because, habits are hard to break, but there are a few players like I think especially the linebackers for Cincy come to mind that rely on it a lot. I'm not just picking on the Bengals; it just comes to mind.
Just seems to happen.
Yeah. So I think that was in the cards and makes sense.
Yeah, I just that particular play, you could see the danger in it, and we talked about it yesterday. But I think there are different ways to get the guy. Maybe instead of going in as high, maybe you just go for the dive for the legs, and get the guy that way instead of trying to get him up around the upper portion of the body and then sliding down.
Sliding down with all your weight across his lower body is just screaming for ankles and knees and muscle pulls and tendons and all those things.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just rough on the human body. But I do feel for these tacklers. I mean, they're pretty hamstrung. I mean, they really are. But I do think the league wants player safety. I mean, sometimes you look at them like, how much do they really want player safety? But I really do believe they do. And they want more points. So you're out of luck, defense.
Yeah, that's been something, and we've talked about it a lot on our show over the last couple of years, how points have been down across the league.
I mean, since COVID, it's been down heavy. I mean, number of touchdowns
I wonder,
scored,
some of that may be the lack of returns.
Maybe. I mean,
because you just don't get those explosive returns, even out to midfield. A kickoff return out to midfield is a big deal.
And actually, now you say that, the other end of that, the upside down of that is, okay, I get a return, but I fumble on my own 10.
Right.
Well, there's points.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
those things lend themselves, they're exciting plays, and they lend themselves to points. I think there were only maybe a couple of returns last year across the league for touchdowns.
I think that number's down dramatically, to be honest
Which,
with you.
again, that affects your scoring.
Yeah, and teams aren't going to invest in the best return guys out there if they can't do other things, too, like we talked about last segment. So, yeah, I do think touchdowns are down dramatically. They were, it was crazy during COVID, but there was no fan base. And
I think defenses had an advantage in that respect.
But still, things have dropped more than I think the fantasy community and betting community and NFL as a whole, and casual viewers want to see big plays. And part of it, though, too, is just defenses have changed how they play.
They're not going to allow those big plays over the top. So, with that, if that's going to be, defenses aren't going to give you the deep balls as much. Mm-hmm. So, if you're the league and you're looking at that, how can you therefore affect more scoring? Well, get more returns.
Get more returns, yeah. And the reason, there's a lot of reasons they do it, but a big one is, quarterbacks getting hurt left and right. So if the third-string quarterback or a second-string quarterback's in there, I'm going to make him be precise with, distribution and not force things or play ahead of his skis I got one start in my career. I'm going to make it count, and I got nothing to lose.
Make him put it in the turkey hole a lot. As John Gruden used. I never understood what that was supposed to mean. I know where he was talking about throwing it. I don't know why it's called the turkey hole.
I don't either. I don't know if he made that up or not. And I also think, too, I always go back to this, because I think D linemen are more talented than O linemen.
Yeah.
If you have to sustain a 12-play drive, well, that's one hold away from screwing it up, or one blown block, or something like that.
I wonder if that's going to start to shift a little bit, though, Max, because we've seen
this year's draft.
Is kind of starts to balance things out.
It's the first step that the offense is counterpunched.
Yeah, even last year's draft, there weren't the premium pass rushers that we'd seen in some recent years.
No.
Those things tend to, it's kind of like an S curve that you look at.
Yeah. Because I do think the receivers have come in the league have been great all along. And
now we're starting to, like this year's defensive back draft is really deep.
I mean, it's deep, but it's not elite either.
It's not elite, but the last couple have had elite guys at the top, and maybe not the overall depth. This one has great depth.
It does. My point there was, I think the receivers over the last several years, including this draft, are better than the guys covering them coming into the league, where the big people have been the total opposite, and it's been even more drastic. But this year they're not. I mean, this year everyone put a better grade on the O-line class than the D-line class.
Yeah, Tomlin was asked about that yesterday. Why are because he mentioned, he said, these receivers are coming into the league, receivers and cornerbacks for that matter, so much more prepared for what they're going to see because they've been training, they've been doing 7-on-7s since they were 8 years old. They know how to cover, they know how to run routes. Much
set
better
players up.
Yeah, much better than the receivers of old, and he's is
year round.
Yeah, they just that's what he said. They do this year round. Like he mentioned today that he saw with his sons when he was they were out doing 7-on-7 stuff. He's like, I saw Sauce Gardner at 16.
Makes sense. Yeah, if you're
you recognize, that's a pretty good young player.
He might have a future. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, the 7-on-7 stuff is really sweeping the world, and I do think I've heard some people.
It's kind of AAU for football.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's less physical. It's flag has gotten bigger as well. I mean, it's not the same.
George Pickens played on Cam Newton sponsored a 7-on-7 team, and George Pickens played on that.
Okay.
Cam Newton sponsored 7-on-7 team.
See, I think that's only going to grow, and I've heard some smart people out there say even the NFL should have a minor league 7-on-7 team type of thing, or even
they're working that direction with the flag football initiatives and things of that nature.
Yeah, basketball on grass.
Yeah,
and, so. But that being said, I mean, the league showed us this offseason all those centers we thought the Steelers would be in the market. They made more than we thought. You know? And
you still need big people.
You still need big people. Those guards are getting huge contracts. All the running backs got scooped up in the first. They didn't get paid as much as people think, but they got scooped up in day 1 and 2. Yeah.
Quickly.
I pivoted to Josh, Jacobs.
I looked up. There were
Henry
so in the period between the legal tampering period and when free agency actually began, 16 running backs changed hands.
Changed teams. Okay.
That's a lot. That was more than any other position.
And it's never like that at that position. You can usually get, a fine player now.
Yeah.
And they've moved on. So I do think the league, back to what we were saying about a lot of nickel, a lot of dime, a lot of too high. The Rams are such a good example. I mean, they have 3 massive interior linemen now, and they're always known for throwing it around the yard with Stafford. Well, if you're going to play too high, we're going to get 6 yards in a cloud of dust,
Yeah, they ran the ball very effectively last year.
Yeah.
And I know, even when they played the game they played against the Steelers, the Steelers were content to kind of allow them to run the football a little bit because you didn't want them throwing the ball to Puka Nacua and Kupp and those guys.
Scary, right, yeah.
The Steelers were able to win that game playing it that way.
Yeah. So I keep bringing up the Rams because they spent a lot of money on 2 guards. Even though they used their first pick in the draft, it was an early second last year on Steve Avila out at TCU, who was a center guard in college.
Yeah.
He played really, really well as a rookie at guard. They let 2 centers walk, bumped him into center, and that wall from guard to guard is a massive group. But it's a huge investment. I don't know that they'll get their money out of it, but that's why they're a really interesting test case to me.
Yeah.
And I don't think Kyron Williams is a special back. I mean, he's not Todd Gurley or, right.
But, we do a lot of fantasy talk on our show.
Super productive.
He'll be a first-round draft pick.
Yeah, he's going to get the ball a lot.
In fantasy anyways.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just because of the volume, and they're telling us, teams tell you what they're going to do with the moves that they make. They're telling us they're going to run the football.
They're going to run the football. And I also think they're preparing for Stafford's replacement one.
And that's probably the second part of that is, look, we know we've got a 36-year-old quarterback. I think he's 36 now.
Yeah.
who
Garoppolo's his backup at this point too.
Is closer to the end than he is the beginning. We want to protect him a little bit better. We want to run the football and not put him in harm's way as much.
And I know nothing about the situation, but it wouldn't shock me if Stafford and McVay had a conversation saying, "I got one more year for you." You know? His wife's even on Twitter all the time saying, "Just retire, Matthew. Come back home." You know. So I mean, he's not long for this world, and they're probably in the draft market a year from now. Well, we could build up the middle with a power run game and guards and centers, and it should be a decent landing spot.
Honestly, this is where the Steelers did this 2 years ago. Where they went out and they paid money for James Daniels and they paid money for Isaac Seumalo. Mason Cole, that didn't exactly work out, but it was better than what they had previously at center. Well, now they can upgrade that center position again, and they'll have a similar build to what the Rams do.
So, this is one of my biggest pet peeves, and, I think we share this conversation, is I really despise when franchises are struggling, which inevitably most do, and it's quarterback time and you're picking early, and you throw them into terrible situations.
Yeah.
And I'm not making excuses for Justin Fields, but that first year was when they spent a lot of money on Allen Robinson, and when the Steelers signed Allen Robinson a year ago, I went back and looked at that Chicago offense and Fields' rookie year. It was as dysfunctional as any of the league. Nobody was succeeding in that. And then
his second year, they're trading away guys like Roquan Smith, and they're just dumping people.
Left and right. And then he gets a little better, but things aren't good around him. And before you know it, it's fifth-year option time. And I just think that's a terrible way to groom a quarterback. Then you and I talk about this in our mock drafts and things. And I did it this the other day on my YouTube channel. I was like, I'm going to do a mock draft for the Patriots. Everyone in the world is going to take a quarterback. But I'm like, that's a terrible situation to throw Jalen Daniels or Marcus May into.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing around them. So I traded down a few spots. I ended up taking Joe Alt. And then I just kept drafting linemen. I'm like, I would love to fall into that a year from now.
Right.
Not now. Right.
Yeah.
So I think that mistake's made a lot.
And I know people look at future quarterback classes and say, well, that next year's going to be not as good, and 2 years from now this is going to be better. Nobody don't know.
Nobody knew who Joe Burrow was.
3 years ago, everybody was talking about how Spencer Rattler was going to be the top quarterback in last year's class.
Yeah, right. I mean,
he ends up losing his job at Oklahoma, transferring to South Carolina, and now he's probably a third or fourth round draft pick.
This time last year, Jalen Daniels wasn't considered an early pick.
Yeah.
And Wentz wasn't when he came out.
Joe Burrow
was out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone remember we were tanking for Tua.
Yeah.
Well, Joe Burrow went well ahead of him, and Herbert's better than him too. So I don't think you can look at that stuff.
Yeah, you just have to. One of the things that Tomlin said, because he was asked, he said, "Well, you have both of your two quarterbacks are essentially under contract for just 1 year. What happens in 2025? Do you foresee yourself signing these guys to long-term deal or anything of that nature?" He says, honestly, we haven't thought that far into the future yet. We're looking at this year and this year only. Worry about next year.
I totally get that, and I'm not sure I 100% believe that, but
I'm sure you at least
had a conversation.
You at least think about it. You may not.
But the beauty of it
is in any situation where you're ready to make a move on anything like that.
It's almost like being able to test drive a car for a year, though. Like, do I want to? I'm going to lease it for a year, and then am I going to buy it or not?
Right.
Like, I don't like the rearview mirror. I don't like this, or whatever it is. But these guys, you're at least going to get your hands on them soon, then in mini camp, and then you're going to be with them every day, and you're like, oh, I like these human beings. I like how they, work together. I like how they fit with the city, the team, the franchise, work ethic. Can we turn them into the answer? And that's what coaching's all about.
And as he said today, now they've obviously had face-to-face meetings with Russell Wilson. He's been in the building. Mm-hmm. They haven't gotten the chance to meet yet with Justin Fields.
I was curious about
since this whole thing has happened. Right. He's like, because he was asked about how do you foresee or how does this work with Justin Fields? I haven't even sat down with him yet. I haven't met with him yet.
It's not surprising. People are probably like, oh, that's malpractice. Like, that's the way it works. I mean, these guys are busy. I mean, they're all
the off
doing
season.
Stuff,
there goes Omar Khan.
Walking by, right?
Yeah, who's been busy guy.
Busy guy. Exactly. He's not here just, picking up the gifts and going golfing. He's got a lot to do.
Yeah, he's signing Quez Watkins today, or agreeing to terms of Quez Watkins.
But I'm sure
reportedly.
Coach Tomlin, the quarterback coach, Arthur Smith have had conversations with Fields.
Yeah, they've probably talked on the phone, but until you get a chance to sit down with them and
get them in the building and all that stuff.
Start going, okay, here's our playbook. Here's this is
get them on the whiteboard and watch film with them and all that stuff, right?
And those are things that will take place over the next few months here, and that's why I thought it was interesting. And he said, that he was asked, why not have an open quarterback? Why not call this an open quarterback competition with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields? He said, I just think for the team's sake, for team continuity, it makes more sense right now to name Wilson the number 1 and Fields number 2. Now we know the pecking order, and they're both learning at the same time. It's that's the it's a bit of it's a bit tough. It's kind of you're back into the situation you were in with Trubisky and Pickett a couple of years ago, where they were both learning a new offense with a new team. In this situation, they're both veteran guys, though,
right,
who are learning
and
a new offense.
So far ahead of all that in terms of experience and resume, and
even far beyond what Trubisky was.
Oh, for not even close.
Yeah,
Trubisky's at the Fields level.
And
however, and I don't want to look too much into it or plant seeds that don't belong, but just listening to the first hour, the first segment, the little we heard from the Tomlin press conference, 2 things stuck out to me. He said Wilson is number 1 for now.
Yes.
And he said he's in pole position. That doesn't mean he crossed
the checkered flag. That doesn't mean he's there. Yeah,
the winner yet. Right. I mean, it's not over. But I think that's what he deserves.
Yeah, it will be a competition, but you give the tip of the cap to the guy who started 200 games and won a Super Bowl.
Right. Yeah.
Mitch Trubisky didn't have that.
Right.
No.
And I think that's how I'd handle it, too.
Yeah. So
it doesn't mean you're guaranteed the job if you fall on your face.
Right. He's got to come in and perform at a high level, or there's option B.
There's a talented guy, young and eager behind you.
Yeah, who's not a rookie. That was the other situation. When you look at Trubisky, Pickett versus what they have here, you've got a guy
been in stadiums,
who's been in stadiums, who started games, who can produce at the NFL level.
Mm-hmm. No, it's an interesting dynamic, and I do wonder, could there be a third-round guy in the mix, too, that would be under contract for 4 more years? How did you handle that? But if not, so what? I mean, you have 2 guys that are going to get a lot of attention.
I wonder, if that's one of the things, when Tomlin talks about picking the brain of a guy like Arthur Smith. Smith has been through some quarterback battles of his own.
Yeah.
Starting with, his first, was it first season? Second? Yeah, no, his first year as the coordinator at Tennessee. They had brought in Ryan Tannehill
for a 5th-round pick.
Marcus Mariota was the established starter there.
He was the second pick in the draft.
Was
young in his career.
Their returning starter. Tannehill was better in the preseason that year. I can remember. I remember that. The Steelers played the Titans that year in the preseason, and even some of the Titans writers were saying, "Oh, Tannehill's been much better than." And they finally pulled the trigger. I think it was the 6th or 7th game into the season. They finally pulled the trigger and put Tannehill in the lineup and
I mean, that's a big-time coaching decision because that's your high pedigree 2nd overall pick guy that's the inferior player. That's hard to do. It's kind of like what happened with Wilson as a rookie, who's also the same draft class as Tannehill. We're spending a good chunk of money on Flynn. You're the 3rd-round pick. Can't keep you off the field.
You're
better. Yeah. I mean, it's become obvious, and everyone in the building knows it. And Tomlin's more aware of this than us. But, I mean, if Cam Hayward and T.J. Watt and Isaac Seumalo say, Fields is better, guys, you got to play him.
I just wonder, in retrospect, if Wilson and Mike Vrabel, who was the head coach at that time, after they got done with that season, said, you know what, we probably should have gone with Tannehill from the beginning and put Mariota on the bench.
It's funny because I did a podcast yesterday about this. The 2 full seasons that Tannehill and Smith put together, over that 2-year stretch, I think it was 19 and 20, or it was 20.
Yeah, it was 19 and 20.
19 and 20. All his advanced metric stuff were top 3 in the league.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm talking like EPA per
and he had
play,
never been that guy before that.
Not even close.
Yeah.
Got him for a 5th-round pick because people thought he was not a bust, but he was kind of a washout in Miami. It's like, we got to move on from this guy. And I think that's when they drafted Tua. Or shortly after. They were moving on.
They had Teddy Bridgewater, I think, for a year.
Okay. They had a bridge.
Bridge over the water.
Bridge over very troubled water, yeah.
But I just thought that dynamic, I just wonder if that's something, because if you think about it, that Pickett-Trubisky camp was really the first time in his coaching career that Mike Tomlin had to maneuver through a quarterback competition.
Mm-hmm. And we talked about that a lot because Rudolph deserves some time too. He was
a
throwaway 3.
I saw the competition that Bill Cowher had when he had 3 guys. And Jimmy Miller's right down there doing Sirius Radio, and he was one of them. and it just it didn't. When you're trying to get 3 guys ready,
it's really, really hard.
You don't have enough time. You certainly don't have enough time in today's NFL with shortened training camps and shortened OTAs and a shortened preseason to figure that out.
And in a way, Rudolph got a little bit of the short end of the stick on that. And what I think could be different, and I don't expect there to be a 3-way in any way, stretch or form, but Wilson might not need as much as Trubisky. He won't need as much, as his first year here at all in terms of reps. Certainly preseason play too. Like he may not even play in the preseason. I have no idea.
I mean, I assume he'll play a little bit.
He'll play like a Ben number of snaps maybe or something like that.
Something, just enough to he's okay.
He's run with his team, but So this one's a little different, but a true three-man competition is almost impossible to be fair to everybody.
Yeah, especially with 3 preseason games, and you just don't have enough time.
And there's not 2-a-days anymore.
There's
just a lot less practice time.
Yeah, for sure. Let's get to a break. He is Matt Williamson. I am Dale Lolley. You're listening to The Drive here on Steelers Nation Radio and watching it on YouTube as we bring that to you here on the video. Check that out on the Steelers YouTube page.
Getting a lot of clicks. People are into it.
As they should. I mean, what more do you want to see than us? That's jazz hands.
Faces for radio on TV. See how that experiment goes.
Absolutely. But we're going to take a break. We are here at the NFL spring meetings. Everything happening here. People shuffling by us. Just saw Omar Khan walk by a little bit ago. But we're going to get to a break. We'll be back with more. He's Matt Williamson. I'm Dale Lolley. You're listening to Steelers Nation Radio.
With the rhythm go. All I know is gotta grind.
Dale Lolley and Matt Williamson on your 24/7 home of the black and gold. SNR Steelers Nation Radio.
Mics are hot.
Welcome back. I am Dale Lolley. He is the Matt Williamson, except no others. Matt, we are live here at the NFL meetings here, and stuff is going on. Of course, the coaches are starting to talk. The AFC coaches talking this morning, and
a lot of buzz.
Mike McDaniel was asked about Odell Beckham, and he said that the Dolphins have an offer out to Odell Beckham. They're just waiting to see what he does.
It's a little odd for me for a coach to say that.
Yeah, I mean, they've got Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, I think they've signed a third guy too.
Yeah, I don't know why that would fit or why they would want to they lost a lot of defensive players in free agency in cuts, and they're going to go more heavily on the offensive side of things.
Yeah, I mean, they've made a lot of moves. I mean, I'll be honest. I thought on the field their 53-man roster would get hurt a lot more in free agency than it did. I mean, they lost some people, Christian Wilkins being the biggest of them, cut Baker, Howard the corner. So they have made some moves and lost some big-name guys. But I think they maxed out the credit cards again and decided we're going to take another shot at
All
this.
in on offense.
All in on offense.
I don't know how Odell Beckham helps them win a game in Kansas City in January.
Yeah.
Or Buffalo or Pittsburgh or wherever.
Does that imply Waddle might not be back a year from now? Or I don't know, probably not. I'm sure it's a one-year deal for Beckham any which way you cut it if they were to do any team that signs him. My old bagel.
But it does, I mentioned before, if you're the Steelers and if, let's say, the Dolphins do sign Odell Beckham and they say, you know what, we got to pick up the fifth-year option on Waddle. Maybe we're not going to do that. We're going to trade him away.
We brought him up before. Devontae Smith, Waddle, a couple guys from that class.
To me, Waddle will be the more appealing one.
Me too.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he's an exceptional player. Both would be great additions, of course. But, guys on their fifth-year option have been moved, even if they are very happy with their team, et cetera. So, I mean, I think it's worth kicking the tires on. He wouldn't be cheap at all.
No,
that's
not
pretty
at all.
Obvious, right?
But again, those receivers that have been traded over the years in these similar situations.
That was A.J. Brown. That was yeah.
They've worked out.
They've worked out. It's funny you brought that up yesterday because I said something along the lines yesterday of a lot of these high pick for player that I have to sign moves haven't worked out. But then you corrected me. You're like, except for the receivers.
Receivers
have. Yeah, they have. They absolutely have.
So that would just be interesting. Not surprisingly, Jim Harbaugh says that McCarthy's the best quarterback in this draft. I think he's a little biased in that way.
Yeah, he's strong that way. One thing about him that I have a lot of respect for, but obviously he can go over the top with too, is he is exceptional or really, really strong at pumping up his players.
Yeah.
I mean, he'll do it with the Chargers, did it with the Niners, every step of the way. And I think it's great. I mean, I think it instills confidence in his guys and gets the most out of them. It's part of his appeal, but he can go over the top on it too.
A little bit. But
they're also not in the quarterback market.
Yeah. I mean, would it surprise you if all their draft picks this year were Michigan guys?
Not to mention he may have an ulterior motive too of, hey, come to 5 and get McCarthy.
Yeah. Well, there's some of that too, yeah.
I mean, it might help the Chargers.
Yeah. Zach Taylor saying that the Bengals are encouraged by Joe Burrow's recovery. Everything is right on schedule. I think we forget he had a wrist injury last year that sidelined him on his throwing hand.
I think we forget that he misses like every preseason in camp since he's been in the league.
It's a bit of an issue.
I think he's had one real off season.
Yeah.
I mean, he had the appendectomy the 1 year. I mean, he's had a lot of things. He had a knee. I think he's a phenomenal player, but the one negative or concern is durability.
Yeah. I mean, it is something that you have to look at. And they've invested now in two gigantic offensive tackles. They look like the two colossus of Rhodes, standing on either end of the line. I don't know that they're the most mobile guys.
No. I mean, their style's pretty obvious. And a lot of it, I think, is on Burrow, too. I mean, he's not Josh Allen, Ben Roethlisberger in terms of build. He's a little leaner, but he's incredibly competitive. He holds the ball in the pocket as long as he possibly can to take the hit. And, his teammates love him for it, and he's a great player because of it.
I think they'd love it more if he
self-preservation would be a little more in tow. Not to mention the Bengals just gave him a huge contract. Like, why don't you protect yourself a little more?
You need you out there, big guy.
Yeah.
If you look at, just looking here, John Harbaugh said that Derrick Henry, who they signed in the free agency, speaks to how we want to play and approach the game.
He sure looks like a Raven. I mean, there's no way around it. I mean, I think the Ravens lost a lot more than they gained this year, too, including the coordinator. But, boy, fits in well. I mean, I think the rest of the division is not thrilled with that signing.
Yeah, I just don't know. He's at that magic 30 age where, at some point, the running backs just happen. They fall off the cliff.
I know. And I've doubted him for 3 years now from that same reason. I think he might just be different than others. It is coming. I mean,
it's coming.
It's coming. There's no question about it. And his wear and tear going back not even to college but to high school is massive. I mean, he's had more carries over the last 10, 12 years as a 17 to 30-year-old than anyone times 1,000. But he's different than everybody else, too. And he was, behind maybe the worst line in the league last year in Tennessee. He was one of the best backs in the league after first contact still. And I didn't think he had that in him,
It's going to be interesting to see what Baltimore does to continue to improve their offensive line because they've had some losses there. I'm kind of surprised at that Morgan Moses trade. You're already in a situation where you maybe need to upgrade your offensive line, and you're going to give up a guy who's been a pretty good player for you.
Mm-hmm. And Moses isn't young, and I'm sure they'll draft these guys like crazy. But he's a quality right tackle, and that line's been hit hard. Back to the running back situation for them. J.K. Dobbins is still floating around, and I'm sure that's all injury-related. But if I were them, I'd probably use a third-round pick on a power back, as Henry insurance. But I think
he's never been a great receiving back. Not that they throw to the backs a lot anyways.
I mean, the difference between Mitchell, who's tiny and a good receiving back, and Henry couldn't be any more stark. But that's also a heck of a tell, too. I mean, there's a much different players on the total spectrum. So maybe they draft someone that's somewhere in between, a Dobbins-type guy to have for a 4-year deal. Maybe Henry's replacement a year from now. But their O-line needs work.
Yeah, for sure. Andy Reid said that multiple teams came after defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo in this offseason.
Would you be anxious to go if you were Spags?
Probably not.
I mean,
you got it pretty good.
Once. Yeah.
I know we're probably going to get 25 or so or plus, of that. And all I got to do is
playoffs every year. I may have add more rings. I'm sure he's being compensated extremely well by defensive coordinator standards. And hey, I mean, it's kind of like a Dick LeBeau thing where I tried the head coaching thing. It didn't go well at all, and I didn't like it so much. I didn't get the X and O and game plan against Super Bowl teams. I like what I'm doing, and I'm one of the best ever to do it. Why change at this stage of my career? He's not 35.
Yeah. Just got an email in here that the league has officially approved some new playing rules. The first one is the Detroit rule that amends Rule 15, Section 1, Article 1 to protect the club's ability to challenge a third time if you get a successful challenge. If you remember, if you'd missed on a challenge, one of your first 2 challenges, you only got one more. Even if you got that one right, you only had 2. Well, now if you get one of the first 2 right, you then get a third.
Oh, okay. That's logical to me. I mean, I would bet that was probably an easy stamp of approval on that one.
We also talked about the hip drop tackle. The other one that they approved, I'm going to have somebody explain this one, is to allow the enforcement of a major foul by the offense prior to a change of possession in a situation where there are fouls by both teams. We talked about that.
Yeah, that was a little convoluted to me when we talked through it yesterday. I'm going to have to hear a better.
Somebody's going to have to do some. Lucy got some splaining to do on that one.
Yeah, that one's above my pay grade. I can't figure that one out.
Well, I think there's a press conference maybe that's going to explain that here. Kicking off roll, I believe it just kicked off. So
it seems like a flock of people are moving at a rapid rate in that direction. So maybe there's something going on.
We'll get some additional explaining on that rule and exactly what that means. People wonder why the NFL game is so difficult to officiate.
Oh man. If you've ever been down on the field near the game, you would understand completely.
Yeah, big people moving very fast.
Yeah, I mean, making the earth rumble like dinosaurs.
Then you get to stuff that hey, if it's this much here or that much there, it's a foul. If it's not, if the helmet's in here as opposed to here.
Yeah. It's all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
I don't envy the officials at all either. I'd be terrible at it. I can't even imagine what they go through and what the answer is. But I do think they do a much better job than people give them credit for. I mean, it's one of those jobs like
when you screw up. So the thing is, you screw up, and it's immediately on social media now. And I'm as guilty as that as anybody because they do screw some stuff up.
Oh, they do.
But it's not like it used to be where 20 years ago there was not social media out there, and you didn't have a rules expert.
And right.
Yeah. On actually part of the broadcast team is a former official explaining. Well, I think they got it wrong on this one, or they got it right on this one. But the fact that we have guys like that just shows you how the popularity of the game.
100%. Yeah, I always go back to the camera angles too. Like, how many camera angles were there of the Immaculate Reception? 2? I mean, they probably would have got that call right, whether it helped the Steelers or not.
What do you mean? They got it right.
They definitely got it right. But, I mean, the times have changed dramatically. And these officials only have one angle, where we have 7 or 8 to look at.
In full speed.
In super slow motion, and the fingertips, did the ball hit the ground, did the ball hit the laces, whatever it is. So it's a brutal job.
Well, this way, Jerry Jones said that last year at this time, he's saying that the Cowboys were all in on winning, and now he's saying that they need to win with less.
Okay.
I mean, they haven't done anything in free agency.
They've done nothing. And to me, that just says we got to get Parsons, Lamb, and Dak signed.
They get some stars that they got to pay up.
The supporting cast, the Tyler Biadishes of the world, are going to be replaced by rookies, by cheap labor. Right. Yeah, that's a tough way to live. But
it is.
You don't want those guys to leave either.
That's another team that they're going to have a decision to make on Dak Prescott.
A lot of people think he's going to be the highest paid player in the league very soon.
Yeah, and if not, then does he become the next Kirk Cousins? And is a quality quarterback hitting the league, hitting the open market.
And he'd make a lot more than Cousins if he was on the open market.
Yeah.
So I don't think he'll leave Dallas, but
I don't think so either. But you never know.
No.
I mean, stranger things have happened, and
absolutely. But they're in a weird place.
They've got
they don't pick early.
The San Francisco quarterback on their roster.
Yeah, Trey Lance, and they also have Rush, who's the 2 really.
Yeah.
I wonder if somebody would be interested in Lance for a 4 or 5 or something like that at this point. They weren't a year ago, and he hasn't changed.
He hasn't played any. He still hasn't played anymore.
No, no tape on him.
Yeah. Sean Payton said it is realistic for Denver to trade up for a quarterback in this draft.
I saw that. It could be. I mean, they're just so light on resources after the Wilson trade. They need so much infrastructure that isn't there. They don't have a wealth of draft picks. They haven't had draft picks that are cheap labor from the last couple of years. But how else do you get a quarterback? I mean, I think you could get Knicks at 12 or 13 or wherever they're at.
Which I think is a good fit for them.
Yeah, but then is that
I don't even love Knicks, but I think he would fit well with what Peyton
I very much do too, but I'd much rather take him at 25 and pick up more picks. I think they're in for a very, very long year, and I would not be wanting to be the GM of the Broncos right now. If the 32 jobs get me a Super Bowl roster, if that's your job as GM, they'd be one of my last picks.
Yeah, that's why I was kind of surprised that Peyton took that job a year ago.
Well, it's paying very, very well, too.
Well, yeah, there's that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of job security, too. I mean, I was listening to some Broncos reporters saying they thought Surtain might get moved and Sutton and, really blow it up.
Yes, I mean, if you move Surtain, you could get a first-round draft pick.
Yeah, I think so.
That's a thing that I think a lot of times fans overestimate, and apparently some media as well, overestimate the value of a player
right
on the open market.
Because the contract.
Because contracts matter.
That's huge. I mean, it's the player minus the compensation, minus the cap space, minus his age and all those things too. And these guys get hurt, and then all of a sudden your asset's gone.
And the other thing that you have to factor into it is the availability in free agency and the draft.
Yeah, I mean, there's a cost.
That's why the wide receivers that moved this year, including Deontay Johnson, I don't think that the return was quite what people might expect because this draft is loaded with wide receivers.
Yeah, I mean, I also think it was telling that the quarterbacks kind of at the Pickett level, the Howells and Mac Jones and Fields, and didn't get the picks that people thought, which also tells me I think the league really values, as we've been saying for months now, rounds 1 through 4 are premium picks this year.
Are pretty solid,
really, and they're better than the last couple of years. So it's like we're going to take advantage of this draft. And we mentioned it too. I mean, didn't seem like much in the Pickett deal to move up or in the Johnson deal to move up. I think that's more valuable this year than most.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to have those extra picks in those first 4 rounds are key in this particular draft. Let's get to another break. He is the Matt Williamson. I'm Dale Lolley. You're listening to The Drive here on Steelers Nation Radio. We are here in Orlando at the NFL meetings. Some of the stuff starting to take place here. Maybe we'll get a little more news on some of these rule proposals.
Yeah, it sounds like that's happening as we speak.
As we come here back for the final segment of today's Drive right after this.
This is The Drive with Dale Lolley and Matt Williamson on your 24/7 home of the black and gold. SNR, Steelers Nation Radio.
Mics are hot.
And we are back. Dale Lolley and Matt Williamson at the owners' meetings here in Orlando. Matt, here for this final segment, I just found this on ESPN here that they have their off-season power rankings.
Oh, okay.
Post free agency.
Room, yeah.
We did the NFLs last week. Let's see where the Steelers come at on this one. I would guess it's probably right around. I think the Steelers were 13th.
I would say 12. I think you're right in that neighborhood.
Yeah,
though. Yeah.
Right in that area after the off-season moves here. They also have the under-the-radar signing for each team.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So at 32 are still the Carolina Panthers. Their under-the-radar move was signing defensive tackle Ashawn Robinson.
Oh, that's a quality player.
Yeah.
Run stuffer, grown man strength type of guy.
They made some interesting.
They did a lot of different stuff. They lost a lot. I mean, they took their defensive allocations, moved them to offense, which I understand. I mean, at least give Bryce Young a chance.
Yeah. I saw something recently, too, that said that Derek Brown might be available from them for a trade. That would be interesting.
See, he's a free agent to be a year from now, and I saw that the other day and thought he would fit in here really well. I mean, he's
a
very
really good player.
A lot like Bent.
That nobody knows about because as
Right.
Dante Jackson told us last week, nobody really has seen any Carolina Panthers games unless you happen to stumble across them.
The only thing I would hesitate there is, I bet you could get him for a reasonably good pick because they're not winning anything this year. They need, they need cap space. They need their cap's not as good as you think either. But then you would have to invest in him.
Then you got to pay him.
You got a lot of money on defense. It's kind of the Snead conversation we had yesterday. But boy, he'd be a good Steeler.
At 31, and this is down from their final rankings of 30, is New England, and their under-the-radar move was signing K.J. Osborne.
He's fine. I mean, he's a 3 or a 4.
Yeah.
I mean, he's okay.
I mean, I like him.
Yeah. He might catch a lot of passes for him this year, but that's more of a indictment on their pass catchers.
It's an indictment on what the moves that they've made, too.
Yeah. Their offense still needs a lot.
At 30, down from 29, is Arizona. And their under-the-radar move is signing Sean Murphy-Bunting. I think they were much higher in the rankings on
Yeah, I
NFL.
think this is more what they are, though. I mean, who is a high-end starter or an above-average starter on that team? Right now, there's not many. And Murphy-Bunting's a quality addition, too. I mean, he's a good starter. At
29, up from 31, are the Washington Commanders, and they're under the radar move. And oh man, this is a stretch. Hiring Lance Newmark as the assistant GM. I don't even know who Lance Newmark is.
I have a feeling he's friends with the writer of this article.
Apparently, Lance Newmark is someone who's never been in my kitchen.
Yeah, and this article brought to you by John Newmark, Mr. and Mrs. Newmark,
Cindy Newmark, his wife. At 20,
I'm sure he's a fine fellow.
He could have just walked by us now and we just offended him.
Right.
Yeah.
How great would that be if the Newmark family just went strolling by with his kids?
Start throwing stuff at us.
With his little kids.
At 28, down a spot, are the Giants, and they're under the radar signing offensive lineman Jermaine Illuminor.
See, I think they completed their O-line.
Yeah.
I like what the Giants did. I mean, they have quarterback and receiver questions galore, but you trade for Burns. I mean, both their lines got
better.
Way better,
yeah. Yeah, which is a good way to build.
Yeah, it's a good start.
At 27, down from 23, are the Broncos, and their under-the-radar move is signing safety Brandon Jones. I think they should be lower.
They haven't done anything. Right.
I think they should be lower.
In contention for first overall pick next year.
Yeah. At 26, down from 25, are the Chargers, and their under-the-radar move signing tight end Will Dissly.
No. I mean, he's a blocker in a run-first offense. I mean, I see what they're doing, but they gave him pretty legit money.
Their offensive coordinator came out and said that Gus Edwards is a bell cow back.
Ooh. I will fear for Herbert's future in some ways. I mean, I just don't know if they're going to utilize him.
Just saying it now.
Yeah.
Do not draft Justin Herbert.
Even if they take
in fantasy this year.
Even if they get Neighbors or somebody like that, still, they're going to run the ball.
Yeah.
It's going to be a transformation.
At 25, up from 28, are the Titans, and their under-the-radar move is hiring defensive coordinator Denard Wilson.
I don't know anything about Wilson, but that's fine. I can believe that.
At least he's somebody that does stuff on the field.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a coordinator. I mean, they're totally changing how they play.
It's
the
not
game.
an assistant GM. The 24 holding steady. The Raiders, and they got 2 under the radar moves, signing defensive tackles John Jenkins and Adam Butler.
Both those guys I kind of liked coming out of school, but I kind of felt like the ship sailed on them. I mean, they signed.
But it's probably it's better than what they had. They also signed Christian Wilkins. I mean, they've really invested in that defensive line.
Yeah, I mean, I guess those guys were cheap additions.
Under the radar.
Under the radar.
Yeah,
that is under the radar. I'll give them that.
Yeah,
I didn't dislike them. I mean, they're fine.
At 23, down from 20, the Vikings, and their under the radar move is re-signing wide receiver Brandon Powell.
Okay, I mean that's. I mean, we're going pretty far under the radar.
We're going much under the radar. Like,
I think he's a good special
This
teamer
is Top
too.
Gun flying in, under the in the valley.
Yeah.
If you go above the valley, you're
you getcha. I assume they think he's the KJ Osborne replacement type. With number 3 on the cheap.
At 22, the Saints, and their under the radar move is signing linebacker Willie Gay. That's a good one.
That's a real good one.
Yeah.
I mean, that one's not very under the radar. But they always do high-profile stuff at a high cost.
At 21, holding steady, the Chicago Bears, and their under the radar move was hiring wide receiver coach Chris Beatty.
Again, whoever the author here knows some people in the league that he's.
He coached DJ Moore at Maryland and spent 3 seasons coaching Keenan Allen with the Chargers. So I guess he has.
Didn't do much with Quentin Johnson last year.
The interesting thing, I was thinking about this on the flight down. So let's say when we do mock drafts, and this was prior to Keenan Allen being drafted or being traded for. When we've done mock drafts for the Bears, a lot of times we have them taking a wide receiver with their second first round pick.
Adunze, often, right.
What if they do that? Now you got DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, and
I still think I would.
And the rookie.
I mean, I would take him over any defensive player if I were the Bears. I'd take him over Bowers.
But I'm thinking now, does DJ Moore become available?
I don't think so.
They're playing in Chicago. Are they going to run a lot of 11 personnel in Chicago?
If you have those 3, you are. I mean,
I just don't know if the weather's going to be real conducive to it.
I hear you. I think that's just a great landing spot for Williams then.
Yeah. At 20, down from 19, are the Seattle Seahawks, and the under-the-radar move was keeping Tyler Lockett on a restructured deal.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good one. I was kind of hoping from a Steeler perspective he'd get cut and sign him to a 1-year deal. I still think he could play, and they just kind of restructured things.
At 19, up from 26, are the Falcons, and the under-the-radar move was trading Desmond Ridder for Rondell Moore.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot to be said. There's something for this with Pickett. There's something to be said with this with Mac Jones and how young starters that used to be on the billboards, it's probably better they're gone. You know what I mean? Because the new guy's coming in town. Rondell Moore's a nice piece.
At 18, down from 17, are the Jets, and the under-the-radar move is re-signing safety Chuck Clark.
Okay, I think he was injured all last year.
Yeah.
So that's – I mean, I like him. He was a big, important piece of the Ravens.
At 17, down from 16, are the Buccaneers, and the under-the-radar move was signing guard Sua Opeta.
Okay, he's a guy no one's heard of, but he's a starter.
Yeah.
That isn't going to break the bank in a guard market that was really expensive.
Really expensive, yeah. At 16, down from 15, are the Colts, and their under-the-radar move was signing quarterback Joe Flacco.
I kind of get it and I kind of don't. I mean, he couldn't be any more different than Richardson.
100% the opposite of what Anthony Richardson is.
And so is Minshew. You know? I mean, but is he just a good influence in the room? Yeah. I mean, no question about it. Colts also didn't do much, so there's not a lot to pick from.
Yeah. At 15, down from 14, are the Jacksonville Jaguars, and the under-the-radar move was signing outside linebacker Travis Gibson.
Okay, not a guy I know a ton about, to be very honest with you.
Gives him like a third pass rusher.
Yeah. Okay, so he's an edge.
Yeah. At 14, down from 12, are the Rams, and their under-the-radar move was signing quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo.
Might pay off.
Stafford's
had injury stuff, and he would keep them highly competitive.
Yeah.
And I don't know, they didn't pay a lot for
as long
Jimmy.
as he can also stay healthy.
Yeah. But, I mean, as a backup, that's what he is.
Yeah. At 13 are the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Oh, okay.
Up from 18.
Up from 18. Okay.
I don't know how they got to 18. They were a playoff team last year.
Yeah.
And their under-the-radar move, I don't know if this is under the radar, signing inside linebacker Patrick Queen
Wow, it was like the biggest move they made.
To me, it would have been, it would have been Deshaun Elliott.
Yeah, that'd be a good
or
one.
trading for Dante Jackson or, one of those moves.
One of those moves. I mean, as deep as they went on some of these teams, that one's not very deep.
Yeah, that's that's the one you put on the billboard.
I mean, that was your biggest price for agent.
It's not it's not on the radar as much as trading for 2 quarterbacks or acquiring 2 quarterbacks, but
I mean, it's not as deep as your assistant GM or area scout for the SEC he signed or whatever, right?
At 12, down from 11, are the Browns, and their under-the-radar move was signing linebacker Jordan Hicks.
Hey, he's all right. I liked him a lot more 2 years ago.
This was the argument we had the other day, too. Are the Browns right now better than the Steelers? I don't think so.
I don't think so, but they are right next to each other.
Yeah. At 11, up from 13, are the Bengals.
Huh.
Under-the-radar move is signing safety Von Bell.
I like that move.
Yeah.
I think he went away for a year.
He's back.
Lost a lot
knows
of games
the defense.
in Carolina. Get back and give it.
Your safeties were a mess last year.
They were.
Yeah. At 10, holding steady are the Packers. The under-the-radar move is revamping the strength and conditioning staff.
Wow. You got to know the team pretty well. I mean, were they that terrible?
At 9, down from 7, are the Cowboys, and the under-the-radar move was keeping assistant coaches Lunda Wells and Al Harris. That tells you they haven't done anything.
I mean, for that one, I understand digging that deep. Painting the weight room doesn't count to me.
Revamping the cafeteria menu.
Yeah, right. Now there's a veggie burger.
At 8, up from 9, the Houston Texans, and the under-the-radar move, and I didn't really like this one, is trading for and extending running back Joe Mixon.
I didn't either. I thought that was their only move I didn't like.
It was a mistake.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's easily defined in the draft, cheaper. I don't think he has a lot left, but it's a good situation for him.
Yeah. At 7, up from 8, are the Eagles, and their under-the-radar move is hiring defensive coordinator Vic Fangio.
That's a great one.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
6 are the Dolphins. I think they should be lower than that.
I wouldn't have them that high, yeah.
Their under-the-radar move was hiring defensive coordinator Anthony Weaver, but they then gave him nothing to work with.
True. He's really highly respected from the Ravens organization, and a lot of people think he's a future head coach. So it's a good step for him.
At 5, holding steady, and I don't know if they should be holding steady, are the Bills, and their under-the-radar move was promoting Bobby Babich to defensive coordinator. He's got Pittsburgh ties.
Does he?
His dad's a Pittsburgh guy, Bob Babich.
Okay. I didn't know that, so I don't know much about him, to be honest with you.
Yeah. At 4, down from 1, the Ravens. And
they have got in hard in free agency.
Yeah, their under-the-radar move was trading offensive tackle Morgan Moses.
I mean, I think that's a case, if you're in favor of it, is, hey, let's get out while we can still get something for him. He had some sort of pec surgery recently, too, and he's been up in age. He's played a ton of snaps.
Yeah.
But how do you replace him? I mean, it's not Falele.
No, it's not Falele.
I mean, yeah.
Falele will fill the hole.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if he can hold the hole.
Right. Right.
At 3, the 49ers holding steady, and their under-the-radar move is trading for defensive tackle Malik Collins.
Yeah, he fits. I mean, that's a team that wants hockey waves, a defensive lineman.
Yeah.
I didn't love the Gross Matos move, but they added quantity instead of quality, where last year they got the opposite with Hargrave.
Yeah. At 2, the Lions up from 4, and their under-the-radar move is keeping offensive coordinator Ben Johnson and defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn.
Yeah, that's huge.
That was a big hold.
Especially Ben Johnson. I thought for sure he'd be a head coach.
They won't be in the same situation next year probably because they're going to lose one or both.
And if their season goes, that's the second-best team in the league, which I don't know if they're the second-best team in the league. But.
And Kansas City's number 1, and their under-the-radar move was re-signing defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo.
I have a feeling he never was threatened to leave, and everybody's happy about it.
Yeah.
But interesting. Mine would have been Marquise Brown. That's not under the radar, though.
Yeah. No, I understand.
Yeah.
But interesting, just a little different perspective on.
Some of those they dug really deep.
They dug deep,
didn't deep at all.
Have to look some of those guys up.
Yeah, there was a couple names I didn't know, even a couple of the players. But
yeah. Matt, that's going to do it for the show today.
It was fun. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, we'll be back again tomorrow and then again on Wednesday. You can also watch the show on YouTube in addition to listening to it on your favorite podcast downloader or Steelers.com or however you listen to the show. We appreciate that. But for my partner, Matt Williamson, here on we got Gerard Schaefer here on site, making sure we look all pretty. Well, doing the best that he can, make us look all pretty on YouTube. And, of course, we have Justin Miller back in Pittsburgh, keeping us on the air. And we also want to thank you for listening to this edition of The Drive on Steelers Nation Radio.
All clear.